You know, every time you step onto an airplane, you're putting your trust in this huge, invisible network of people and parts that keeps these incredible machines flying safely. But what happens when that network gets stretched thin, all the way across the globe, creating blind spots you can't even see? Well, let's dive into a new technology that's trying to fix all that.
We've all been there, right? You're sitting on the tarmac, and the pilot comes on to announce a delay. Why? Because of one small component that has to be shipped from thousands of miles away. And look, it's more than just a pain, it's actually a symptom of a much bigger, way more complicated problem in the world of aviation.
So get this, over 900. That's how many FAA-certified foreign repair stations the U.S. aviation industry depends on. We're talking more than 900 facilities in countries all over the world, from China to El Salvador, doing critical maintenance on the very planes we fly in every single day. I mean, that kind of dependence, it's a huge logistical and honestly, a security nightmare.
Okay, so that brings us to the heart of it all, what we're calling the 6,500-mile problem. And it's not just about distance, it's really about oversight, and maybe most importantly, it's about trust. Just think about it. An FAA inspector in Los Angeles, they can't just pop over to a facility in Beijing for a surprise inspection. It doesn't work that way. Between the distance, the visas, the government red tape, true, effective oversight becomes, well, basically impossible. And that creates this massive gap where you start to wonder, is that part really what they say it is? So it all comes down to this one piece of paper, the FAA Form 81303. It's like the golden ticket, the absolute proof that a part is legit and safe to install on an aircraft. But in this tangled global supply chain, how can you really be 100% sure that the part and the paperwork that comes with it are the real deal? The whole system is basically built on a foundation of trust that's, frankly, a little shaky.
Okay, but what if you could just sidestep that whole fragile system? What if you could get rid of the problem entirely? That leads us to a really revolutionary idea. Just print the parts right where you need them. I mean, the concept is so simple, it's almost beautiful. Instead of waiting days or even weeks for a certified part to snake its way across the ocean, you just manufacture it, on-site, on demand. This one little shift completely changes the entire game of aircraft maintenance.
The fancy term for this is point-of-use manufacturing. And let's be clear, we are not talking about your buddy's little 3D printer in his garage. No. We're talking about incredibly advanced industrial-grade machines guided by artificial intelligence that can produce parts strong enough and precise enough for a modern jetliner.
All right, let's geek out on the hardware for a sec. You've got printers like the Velo 3D. It uses high-powered lasers to literally melt and fuse superfine metal powder, layer by microscopic layer, to build incredibly complex parts out of titanium. Then you have printers from Markforged, which can weave continuous strands of carbon fiber into super strong thermoplastics to create parts that are as strong as aluminum but way lighter. And here's the kicker. Each one has its own AI brain, watching everything to make sure it's absolutely perfect.
But, you know, the printer itself, that's really only half the story. To make this whole thing trustworthy and secure, you need a brain. You need a guardian that can't be fooled. And that's where the Sovereign Forge comes in.
Think of it like this. The big, fancy Velo 3D or Markforged printer is the hands. It does all the physical work. But the Sovereign Forge, that's the mind. It's a totally separate, dedicated computer system that acts as this incorruptible, AI-powered inspector watching over every single thing the hands do.
So what's actually in this Inspector Hub box? Well, first, you've got a super powerful, rugged computer that does all the thinking right there on site. Then it has its own eyes, a whole bunch of thermal cameras and laser sensors mounted inside the printer to see everything. And to make sure it's always connected, it's got both a cellular backup and a high-speed satellite link, so it can securely send its data from pretty much anywhere on Earth.
Okay, so now we get to the real magic here, the AI itself. This is the part that functions as a tireless, completely unbiased, and totally incorruptible inspector. The best way to think about this AI is like a virtual FAA inspector, one that never sleeps, never takes a coffee break, never gets distracted, and is completely impartial. It watches every single layer of metal powder as it's fused, every strand of carbon fiber as it's laid down, and it checks for microscopic flaws that no human eye could ever hope to catch.
All right, let's put this all together and see how it works in the real world. So picture this. A Boeing 777 is stuck on the tarmac in Beijing, needing a specific titanium bracket. Back in the US, Boeing securely beams the encrypted design file to the Sovereign Forge unit in Beijing. A Velo 3D printer starts building the part, while the Forge's AI watches and audits every single nanosecond of the print.
Once it's done, the AI verifies a near-perfect match and cryptographically signs that all-important digital FAA form. Finally, an inspector back in LA can review the AI's report and digitally sign off on it. The whole thing is locked down, totally verified, and happens at lightning speed.
Okay, so what does this all mean? What's the real payoff here? Why is this such a fundamental shift for aviation maintenance?
Let's go back to our grounded 777. Getting that bracket the old-fashioned way could take 2 weeks, 14 days, all while that multi-million-dollar airplane is just sitting there, losing money. With on-demand printing, you can slash that downtime to just 48 hours. I mean, come on, that is a massive, massive game changer for the economics and logistics of the entire industry.
And look, this goes way beyond just making your flight less likely to be delayed. Think about the military. You could print a critical part for a fighter jet on some tiny island in the middle of nowhere without needing a vulnerable supply ship. Or think about the future of flight. Those new electric air taxis? You could print their parts right at their remote charging stations. It's really a whole new era of manufacturing that's decentralized and way more resilient.
And when you boil it all down, it really comes back to this one idea. The problem with this global maintenance supply chain, it was never really about the miles. It's always been about trust. Or really, the lack of trust in what's happening on the other side of that 6,500-mile gap.
What this technology really does is replace that blind faith with cold, hard, cryptographic proof. It creates a system where we can have total certainty that a part printed in a jungle is absolutely identical to the part that was designed back at headquarters. So it leaves us with a pretty huge question, right? What other industries, what other parts of our world could be completely transformed when we can finally, truly trust what is made, anywhere on Earth?